Hi, I'm Cindy Healy, and I compulsively volunteer for stuff. Case in point, right? I just can't help myself. If it looks like fun, or if it's a challenge, or if it sparks my FOMO, I just got to do it. I take that giant step forward, raise my hand, and I say the three magic words, I'll do it. So today I want to talk to you about some of my all-time favorite I'll do it's. And that was the 3 years that I spent working on Mars Pathfinder at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. So this was back in the 90s, so we're going back a few years. Let's see. So Pathfinder, before it saved Matt Damon's life in the movie The Martian, was our first trip back to Mars since the 70s in the Voyager spacecraft. And it was going to be done at 1/15th the budget of Voyager. So it was our first faster, better, cheaper spacecraft, and we had a very tight budget of just around $200 million, and we had a really aggressive timeline of 3 years. So yeah, in space travel, that is a very cheap budget. In fact, the joke was around the lab that we were building a spacecraft and putting a rover on Mars for less than it cost Kevin Costner to make Waterworld. So I was asked to join the team as a software engineer working on simulation software for the spacecraft. We faked the whole spacecraft. We had to fake the spacecraft out of thinking it was flying to Mars when it was in fact in Pasadena in our laboratory, right? And so I joined this team. It was an incredibly eclectic mix of people. Everyone from old-timers who'd been on lab and this was their last mission before retirement, to young kids right out of college that this was their first job that didn't involve getting paid in tips. And everyone in between, like yours truly. We had women, we had men, we had moms, we had dads, we had grandmas and grandpas, we had married people, and we had single people like me and my buddy Becky. She was my cube mate. She was one of those young bucks right out of college, and we became lifelong friends. Oh, we got into all kinds of trouble together. Anyway, we had this amazing team of people. You talk about being united behind a common purpose. We were united behind this common mission of the faster, better, cheaper spacecraft. We had a lot of doubters who didn't believe that we could do it at such a tight budget. And we had to prove them wrong. So it was just an amazing team to be a part of. We didn't compete with one another. We all just helped one another. We were trying to accomplish the same goal. A couple of my favorite stories. So about a year into my project there, I was asked to take over a piece of software that had fallen 9 months behind schedule. And the software involved the star scanner on the spacecraft. So the star scanner is basically the eyeball of the spacecraft, and as the spacecraft whirls its way to Mars, it's constantly looking around and recognizes each star based on its brightness and location, and uses that to triangulate where it is along the trajectory. Easy peasy, right? Just simulate all the stars in the sky. Anyway, I was lucky enough to be partnered with a coworker who was an actual aerospace engineer and scientist. And so he took care of the space stuff, I took care of the software, and in 8 weeks of working night and day, we got that software working and we could fake out Pathfinder so that it could think that it was flying to Mars when it was actually in our laboratory. So we perfected that navigation piece for the spacecraft, and it's a good thing because you know what they call a spacecraft that doesn't have perfect navigation? Spacecraft. It's an old space joke. Anyway, I'm very proud to say that that software has been used to fake out many a spacecraft since Pathfinder, and I was even brought back to JPL in 2004 to win a special award for it. So my next story involves the Mars Pathfinder launch team. So we were a team of over a couple hundred people, and about 25 people would get to go to the Kennedy Space Center and live for 2 months and reassemble the spacecraft in Florida and get it ready for the final launch. All my buddies were going. I just had to be on that list. But I wasn't on the list. I was on the nice to have with my simulation work, but I was not on the must have list. And I was geeking out. I really wanted to go. I'm a big space nerd. The Right Stuff is one of my all-time favorite movies. If you haven't seen it, check it out. Anyway, I knew that I belonged on the Kennedy Space Center, so I had to get my name on that list. And so I was really frustrated, and I was looking for every opportunity. So when one of my coworkers, Ron, the Unix system administrator, lamented to me that he was on the list, but he didn't want to go because his wife was about to have a baby, so it was terrible timing for him, I said, I'll do it. And even though I had no idea how to be a Unix system administrator, I just volunteered. I'm like, you can train me. How hard can it be, right? So I took a lot of notes. Anyway, he loved the idea. We sold it to management, and the next thing you know, I was in Kennedy. So I was unpacking computers, stringing cables under the floor, and formatting machines based on some very detailed notes that Ron had given me. I literally had no idea what I was doing, but I got to be there. That's me in the clean suit with the spacecraft. Having free reign at the Kennedy Space Center was even better than I thought it would be. I got to get up close and personal with the space shuttle. I saw multiple rocket launches, saw 2 shuttle launches, which were absolutely majestic. All this on top of living in a beachfront condo on Cocoa Beach with all my Pathfinder buddies next door to me. We worked hard, we played hard. I learned how to boogie board, and I got the best suntan I've ever had in my life. As we say in the rocket business, it was a real blast. Anyway, on the night of the launch, we were all supposed to be at our outpost bunker about 3 hours before takeoff. And Becky and I were 20 minutes late because we stopped to take a selfie with the rocket, and we were way ahead of our time on the selfies. We stopped to take a selfie with the rocket, and when we got there, everybody was waiting for me, and looking at me like, you're late. We had no connection back to JPL, and everyone was looking at me, the Unix system administrator. I had to get us back online, and I was just like, you talk about the imposter syndrome. I literally was not a Unix system administrator. But I just took a deep breath, thought about all my training from Ron, and the first thing he told me to do was check all the hardware. So I checked the back of every computer, and I checked every piece of test equipment that we had, and I finally made my way over to the Cisco router. And sure enough, the cable was loose. And all I had to do was jiggle that thing back in, and we were back online. And I was the hero as the Unix system administrator. So we got to the final launch, and we're sitting there, and everyone's on the communications link, and it was just like in the movies. Every function says, "Go for launch." It was crazy. It was surreal. I'm still pinching myself. As we heard the rocket ignite, we ran outside, and we got to see it take off into the night sky. It was beautiful. So we started celebrating, but we knew we had a long time to wait because it was a 7-month journey to Mars. So that was in December of '96, and within 2 months I would leave the lab. You see, I was a contract employee at JPL, as about 30% of employees are. And my contract was up on Pathfinder, and they had put me on another long-term mission. But every day I went to work, I was miserable. It just wasn't the same. Pathfinder had set a really high bar, and I just thought, it's time for me to go do something completely different. This is all I'm going to do every day is just be sad that it's not the same old team. So I put my resume out there because I actually had something pretty hot on the top of my resume. Doors open. I said, I'll do it. I jumped in and took a new trajectory in my career. So on the 4th of July, 1997, landing day, I was a guest at JPL along with a couple hundred other people in an auditorium waiting for word from our old friend. We waited and we waited. We had to wait for the sun to come up on Mars so that the solar arrays would light up and could send the message, right? But eventually, it happened. We had done it. And we weren't the only ones celebrating. The whole world celebrated with us. And it was so cool to see my buddies on the nightly news. So that was 20 years ago, and obviously it still moves me a great deal to talk about it. I keep a framed photo of Pathfinder in my office to remind me to take risks, to step forward, to raise my hand, to say I'll do it, because adventure and amazing experiences lie on the other side of those 3 magic words. So, one final note. Next week I'm flying to LA for the 20th anniversary party. Thank you.